Hello and welcome to the Raw Fork podcast. I'm your host, dr.marinabuksov, and I'm a functional medicine pharmacist in New York, as well as an integrative health coach and clinical herbalist. I'm pleased to go into season 3 of this podcast and continue to bring on other holistic minded pharmacists, as well as healthcare professionals to the show. I'm constantly inspired by my guests and their stories and love sharing their points of view with you all. Hi, good morning, and welcome to the Raw Fork podcast. I'm so excited to have with me today Dr. Stephanie Gaglion. She's a pharmacist and a nature therapy guide. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Marina. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. So in your own words, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into pharmacy in the first place, and then maybe what happened first, the nature part or the pharmacy part?
Okay, great. I mean, of course, from a young kid, I was in love with nature. I think a lot of us start off that way and maybe forget along life. But it was never thought of something that I could have a career in or something that I really should pay attention to. I think our culture tends to kind of forget about the importance of play, of dance, of the creative arts, of things that bring us joy and pleasure. And so, like many people, when I was in high school and feeling the pressure to try and figure out what I was going to do for the rest of my life in high school, it starts so young. And I was naturally gifted in math and science. I had a big heart and wanted to help people. I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to do something good in the world. And that's something that's stayed with me forever. And because of the math and science, I was geared towards healthcare. My grandpa was in the pharmacy industry. And when I started to do research, it seemed like a good way, and this is the honest truth, that's all you'll get from me, be involved. To be involved in healthcare, but it felt like at the time, not really knowing much about pharmacy, a little bit of a detached way to be involved, knowing that I had such strong emotions. I couldn't imagine the strength it would take to be a doctor, a medical doctor, and the emotional investment. Little did I know I'd have those same issues follow me in pharmacy, because that doesn't go away. You care about people, you're dealing with people, it's going to be there. But that was what geared me towards pharmacy more than any other health oriented fields. And so I went through my pharmacy school right out of high school, completed my doctorate, and I started working in chain retail pharmacy. And as I just kind of mentioned and alluded to, it was really stressful and really hard for me to manage with the emotional component due to my nature. It's different for everyone, and that's a big part of my mission, is that we are all unique and individual, and there's no right or wrong. There's no shame for having emotions. There's no shame for loving nature, for prioritizing things that make us feel good, and that's a big part of what I'm an advocate for. I was, as I said, working in the retail pharmacy and feeling really drained, overwhelmed. My health was declining really fast. I can't say that there was even a small period of time where I was thriving. I feel like it went automatically into burnout for me. And those feelings that I was having, my desire to have my own health, led me to seeking alternative modalities. And it was a natural instinct of mine to go out in nature from as long as I could remember, when I needed soothing and when I needed a break or just like to be held. And I didn't even know it. I used to go on bike rides in my local preserve when I was young. I grew up in Long Island.
Oh, I was going to ask.
And so I'm very grateful that I had a little bit of both worlds. In Long Island, I have access to nature, although not as prevalent and deep and wild as other areas, but I still have a good amount of access. But when I was young and struggling with heavy emotions, overwhelm, I would get on my bike and ride over to my nature preserve and I would automatically feel better, not thinking about it, not needing to know why. It was there for me from as long as I could remember. And so as I was having these struggles with dealing with my new career in the pharmacy world at a retail setting, which is specific, I think it's important to mention the difference in the climate. And I would find myself going and walking in nature on my days off. I'd work 12-hour shifts, 4 to 3 days a week. And then on my 3 days off, you'd find me in nature, trying to restore and replenish everything that was sucked out of me. And I started to see online different people sharing posts about nature therapy, forest bathing. And I was so hooked and drawn. And I'm like, it is therapy, it is healing, and other people are advocating for this. I need to learn more. And so while I was working in retail, I signed up for this training, not knowing what it really was, how I was going to do it, if it was a good choice, if I approved of my own choice to sign up, if it was a good investment, all these worries and doubts continuously trying to take me out of it, to try and get me to take it back, to not go through with it. And something in me was like, no, this is right. This is something you need to do. There's no logic here. And this was maybe the first time I had conscious awareness of the difference between the two. Mm-hmm. I was always very logical, very science oriented, practical. And yet inside, my true nature is very artistic. And I never really saw myself that way or even allowed myself to see that part of me until the last couple of years. And so no matter what I tried to do with my logical mind to talk myself out of this training, I ended up there. And it was the most amazing experience I've ever had. It was so much more than I thought it would be. It blew my mind. It integrated all these things that I felt passionate about and had this intuitive knowing was important and what was needed. And I found my home. And to be honest with you, I've never felt that in any other modality, any other experience. There's always something that I'll pick up on that's not completely in line with me. And I'm very graced and grateful to have an open mind where I can listen and hear and be like, that's not me, but I appreciate it, and have that distinction. Mm-hmm. But there's still this longing to find my thing, you know, like what do I really believe? What's the whole picture? Especially in a career, if you're someone who really cares about what you're doing in the world, which is who I am. I was so happy and grateful to find this organization. I trained with the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy. They're a global organization, and they've trained guides all over the world. And their mission is to make it more accessible for the average person to have connection to nature and to receive the healing benefits from this. The founder, Amos Clifford, he brings light to the fact that the healthcare industry needs to integrate nature. And so having trained guides is his way of trying to have, build trust, build relationships where medical professionals can feel safe in referring patients to a nature therapy guide to start this connection and to have this relationship and to integrate it into the medical model. And there are people, certain providers, more in European countries and now starting in California, writing nature prescriptions. So it's hard for some people to grasp. There's a lot to it. I'm going to be a lifelong learner on how to really understand this. And it's beyond logical comprehension, and that's the tricky part, but also the exciting part, because we're more than just logic. We have, whether you want to call it a soul, whatever it is to you that connects us all, and these things that you can't explain, it's a big part of the practice. I'm rambling, so do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, can I just pause for 1 second? I'm so okay. Wow, that was a lot to take in, and thank you so much for sharing. I can totally relate and resonate to everything that you said, except I didn't really grow up around too much nature. I'm coming from like urban Ukraine, where it was like a small town, not too much nature. But we had like a local river that we would go to and things like that. And then at 9 years old, I moved to America, so straight to New York City, Brooklyn. So not too much access to nature, but it's here for us if we need it. Every city has this city planning, right? And they all incorporate parks and nature because they know how important it is to morale and to our mood and our happiness to be in a concrete jungle. We definitely need green in this kind of environment. So if you notice, like if you're a tourist or you visit places, you know, every city has a city center, has parks. It often has like parks interspersed throughout areas, especially the more popular town center areas. So we know how important it is. We just kind of forgot about it because we don't really pay attention to it as much when we're like caught up in science, like you mentioned, and like finding cures for diseases. But the basis of being a human is so much more than just our physical body. You know, we're not body mechanics, and we're not just bags of bodies walking around. And our heart, as you mentioned, it's one of the most rich organs filled with electromagnetic fields. So we've done experiments. It's not all in the brain. You know, there is this whole heart and brain conversation and relationship that science doesn't talk too much about yet, but they're starting to kind of pay attention and listen. So I'm really glad that you're doing the work of getting those messages out and really seeing the importance of nature and connecting with nature and having a personal relationship with nature.
Yeah, I really appreciate everything you just pointed out. There is a lot more science coming out to back up the things that we've known for centuries, thankfully. There's a lot of research that the organization I trained with will have on their website if anyone's interested. It's natureandforesttherapy.org, and there's tons of research for anyone who's skeptical or afraid to just blindly listen to what other people have found on their own, which is a great skill to always do your own research. Yeah.
I'll have that in the show notes also. And I think, I forget the term for it in Japanese, but the Japanese have a whole culture around forest bathing.
Yeah, Shinrin Yoku, which translates to forest bath. And so the idea is beyond just being in nature, which has benefits, bathing in the forest with all of your senses heightened has added benefits. So it's the state in which that you choose to be in nature that really brings in the amplification of benefits. So many of us nature lovers will ride our bikes, we'll run, we'll talk with our friends, we'll do all these things in nature, which is awesome. Keep doing it. But this other way of being in nature, as you said, being in relationship with it. When you're spending time with a friend, you're not going to stare at your phone and do your work. You're going to pay attention to them and you're going to listen and share in balance. And so a big part of what I am passionate about is learning what it means to be in healthy relationship, because it's something that we don't prioritize, and it impacts absolutely everything. Our relationship with health, our relationship with money, our relationship with ourselves, and we don't spend any time on that. So
yeah, absolutely. And I also want to point out, so being in the forest over all your senses, scientifically and physically, there are stuff going on as well. So you're in this fresh air, and also the air has molecules of essential oils flowing around from all the trees that are secreting these beautiful cleansing properties that help us with our lung health and asthma and other breathing things. So it does have both like a spiritual component and an actual physical scientific component, and it has been proven.
yeah.
So yeah, definitely for the skeptics out there, it all makes sense. And I also want to share that I went to herbal school myself, and it was also like way more than I thought I would get, way more than I bargained for, and it blew my mind as well, because I wasn't just taught like, okay, this is a more natural substitute for this, you know, do Y instead of Z, do X instead of Y, but it was like, no, we are like part of a cycle. We are this ecosystem. We are nature. We're not separate from it. We're not above it. We are it. like we're together in this, on this planet and in the universe. So establishing like those relationships is really the basis of life, and just knowing your place in the world and feeling happy and comfortable in that place and finding the joy and the gratitude from that place.
Yeah.
So like that was just such a huge lesson for me as like also like this, left brain, like logical person and pharmacist, to now like finding this whole other side, just because I wasn't really raised with that. And I wasn't also part of like a religious community either. So I think like, so the people that have religious backgrounds or like religious communities or homes, they kind of have that spiritual aspect figured out for them, and like maybe they're more balanced in that. But for people that are kind of flailing around and they don't have that aspect at all, it's like hard to grasp that and find that from somewhere. And I think nature can give that to us too, like being part of that wonder and the childlike, joy, as you mentioned, and the spiritual component.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's another key component of the training I completed, was to try and make the practice as culturally neutral as possible so that people can hear it, because there's so much bias and stigma. Even herbalists, people are like, that's quackery. Nature, oh, that's ridiculous. It's sad, but it's very true. And so the role of the guide is to try and create a space for people to have their own relationship, their own experience, without it being told how you're supposed to have it, what you're supposed to do with it. And like you said, for people that don't have religion or another form of spirituality that makes sense to them or that they feel comfortable with, nature does offer that. And maybe that's not the way for someone. It's not going to be the way for everyone, and that's okay. But something about nature and man seems more, I mean, it is more connected than a lot of things. And it's really a gift to be able to try and help, as a guide, we try not to have any expectations of what people experience on the walk. But for me, at least, there is a hope that they will find this connection to nature and this relationship that will change their lives and help them find peace and belonging, because we need that.
Yeah. And something that you said earlier about making everything intentional and like putting an intention behind things. So, you could have nature right there and you could be part of it and like have the trees on your commute and things like that, but not pay attention to it. But even in a city, like I mentioned, even though like it's bogged down with a lot of concrete and ugly things, if we find those trees on our commute and like pay attention to the flowers and notice things, that's bringing in like more of that awareness and the gratitude for the things that we already have, rather than like going for, oh, the grass is greener on the other side and like I'm going to be happy when this, and whatever the case is. So it's just like, okay, but what can you be happy for right now, and like what are your resources available to you right now? And so that's when we can enter into this conscious and aware relationship as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And like you mentioned earlier, there's like, I don't know if you ever heard the term biophilia.
Well, I know it's the name of your company.
Yeah, so I think it's important for
And
me to share
philia,
this.
yeah, philia means to like,
Mhm.
and bio means, I guess biology, life. Yeah.
Yeah, so philia as opposed to phobia is what we're attracted to and drawn to, not afraid of. And biophilia is a term that means that humans have this natural instinct to be drawn to life, to connect with life, all life. And so what I was, yes, that's why I chose my business name, but also there is biophilic design. So what you had mentioned, where cities and urban areas have this aspect of their decision-making process that considers this. And even now they're starting to implement nature into hospital settings. I'm so grateful for this. My dad recently had surgery, and one of the channels on the TV was nature sounds and streams. And that's the thing, is there's studies and science that backs up that the simple act of listening to nature sounds through technology still does something. of course, the technology has its own impact on us. But looking at a picture of trees can cause physiological changes in our body. And then in addition, when you're out in nature, surrounded by the trees and bathing in the chemicals and organic compounds emitted from the plants, there's that added component. And so what you mentioned with essential oils is one of the most amazing things I learned from my training was that the plants and trees, when they have any form of threat, any host of invasion, they emit phytoncides into the air, which is a type of terpene. And these phytoncides is their immune response. And then when we breathe it in and when it affects us, we produce an increased production and activity of natural killer cells in the body, which is a part of our immune system. It's a white blood cell, and it fights off virally infected cells and tumor cells. So this is one of the main scientific reasons to back why in Japan they use this as preventative medicine and anti-cancer prevention. So if that's not enough to get you to spend 2 hours outside a week, a day, there's a lot of other things that can get you there, but that's something for the science minds.
Yeah, especially like the firs and the pine trees and all the needle trees. They, the cypresses, they are the ones that have a lot of the essential oils and volatile compounds that come off. And that's why those forests are amazing, have amazing healing benefits. And that's just such a good example of symbiosis between us. Not only do we have the carbon dioxide oxygen cycle between us, but we also have this other way of communicating with these phytocompounds and these constituents, whether by ingesting or just breathing them in. And so it's amazing. And we don't even realize like all of these things that are going on. They're just automatic. But if we just take the time to like learn about them and study them and appreciate that they're going on, we can't survive without nature and trees. They can survive without us, no problem. But we actually are the ones that are dependent on them.
Yeah. What you just mentioned is one of these quotes that I remember from the book, The Biophilia Effect by Clemens Avroy. He talks about how our immune system is a sensory organism. It's designed to receive and be receptive to unconscious information at all times. And so even without ingesting the plants and breathing it in, it's informing our body and responding to it. And so beyond the physical connection of us and nature, the imagery and the metaphors and the archetypes that exist in nature inform our bodies as well, which is the more feminine side of things, the things that we can't see, the things that are like magical and hard to grasp. They're mystical, and it's something that our culture has kind of ostracized and kind of belittled the importance of. Unfortunately, it's something that I've been coming into contact with more recently as I go through my life journey and seeing how the feminine and masculine interact in all different areas. And the basis of life is the conjunction of man and woman. It's everything. If you look into everything, there's that polarity, the yin and yang. And there's a really large imbalance with the feminine in our culture specifically. And nature therapy, to me, is a way in which we can try and kind of restore that balance. It's a space where we can prioritize the need for pleasure, the need for joy, the need for wonder, and the need to get out of your head and get into your bodies and to just explore and be curious and to love without needing to have any expectation or any benefit, any production from it.
Yeah, there's a couple of really great points that I wanted to make there. So yeah, I think the male aspect of things, the masculine, it's like the things that we can observe and quantify with our five senses, the organoleptic senses, but then that sixth sense, the intuition, the je ne sais quoi, that's the feminine. Like that's something that's invisible to all of our senses except that one, like in the heart and the knowing, the deeper knowing that is much harder to access, much harder to come by. And I think in the past, it was a little easier because there was less technology and there was like more reliance on like this communication with source and nature. But now like, we're so far removed from it living in all these cities. And so it's hard for us to like believe it and trust that sense that it's speaking the truth.
Yeah.
So it's a very much like a deep conversation with yourself and like a lot of work to actually tap into that. And so I really also commend that you're working through that channel and like opening that channel of communication. And also, I think that yes, nature does provide us with the access to these channels, and like, you know, a lot of cultures have like their own like medicine people, and you know, some cultures call them shamans, but every culture has them. So it's like they usually get these like divine messages from the plants, and that's how they know like, let's try this plant, let's try that plant, because they get like these downloads, these messages from the plant itself, even though maybe it's the first time they're thinking about using this particular plant. So there's like certain ways you can observe how the plant looks and what it does and how it smells like, but also there's like that other quality that is mystical.
Yeah, so I just want to mention great points, and something that I've been playing with and not completely sure yet, it's a fine-tuned thought, is like why nature and natural medicine has become so, like you mentioned, we have trouble trusting it. And I've been stuck with, not really stuck, but it's, I guess, part of the conditioning of pharmacy training, of our current climate, the world we live in, that the things that we can't see and quantify and be certain of, or at least feel a maybe false sense of certainty of, are bad. And nature doesn't play with that game. It's trust me or don't, but if you trust me, I got you. And it's something like I've been saying is just spending time and prioritizing building that relationship is enough. Just giving your attention and awareness is enough. It doesn't have to be you've solved the world's problems, you're one with nature, all this stuff. Just pay attention. It wants to be seen. The feminine wants to be seen. It wants to be valued. And something that I've been thinking about from in pharmacy school, at least from the way I perceived it, there was this underlying message that natural medicine was not to be recommended. Don't trust it. If anyone comes to you in the pharmacy counter, asks about it, just say no, like point and it's something that I think about a lot, why that is, where it comes from. My belief is that people don't intend to be, no one means to do these things. There's like really deep layers on why we respond. But my point is in consideration with the need to prioritize intuition and the need to prioritize logic in balance of the two, there's a lot of professionals and medical alternative medicine healers who rely heavily on intuition and ignore logic, and vice versa. Both of those are problems. You can't ignore what's out there. And I think me and you really agree on this. We have to consider all treatment options for the patient and look at the patient. What do they need? How are they going to heal? It's not about my agenda. It's not about what I think is best. And what you pointed out with shamans and different medicine people and how they have this connection to their intuition and that guides them in how to treat others. I have seen different healers who, I don't know, I'm sure you've heard of muscle testing. Mm-hmm. So it's like really, you can't repeat that. It is never going to be the same. There's no way to prove that what happens and how to remove bias. And are you pushing too much? Like my logical mind is the biggest skeptic out there. So for me, trying to consider how it makes sense, at least for me, to use both intuition and logic in treating others. And so far, what I've come up with is intuition is meant to guide me and me alone. And logic and studies is there as a safeguard for when I'm responsible for other people. I can't tell them what's best for me. That's what my intuition is. My intuition is my inner guidance. So with shamans and medicine people who have a very deep, intimate relationship with their intuition, I can't speak to say if they know what's best for others through their intuition. I think it's possible. But I think for the average person, your intuition should be for you. And when you have a strong relationship where you can really discern your intuition from other things, your trauma responses, your mind coming in really fast before the intuitive hit, there's a lot in discernment. And so for me, what I've felt like lately is the intuition needs to be integrated alongside the current medical model, and we need to teach individuals to have a relationship with their intuition to support what they hear from medical professionals. When I tell you these are the studies and I show you, and I did all this work and research, it's not going to be specific to you. It's not going to consider all the different disease states and all the different combinations of medicine that you're on and all the things that are individual to you, your body chemistry, the way in which your specific organ systems are communicating. There's no way for any one individual medical professional to really consider it all. And to my demise, I guess, you can't do it all. One person can't do it all. And that's why teams are important. I hope that we start to keep seeing collaborations among different professionals where there is priority for intuition, there's priority for self-care, there's priority for nutrition, exercise, connection to other humans and non-humans. Each of these things is what informs our health expression. And so just trying to use our discernment with how to prioritize each of these things is, to me, where we need to start to see healthy people.
Yeah, all of that is, yeah, totally agree. And that is a true integrative and holistic model when we consider all of those things. And I agree, like intuition is your own inner moral compass, and it can interfere with a lot of the bias, whether it's inherited or what you see or logical. It can intercept those signals from our intuitive compass. So I think the more you use it and the more you experience using it and what it feels like when you get it right or wrong, let's say, that's how you'll start to discern. So like a lot of even healers and doctors, you'll say like, oh, this doctor has a hunch. Well, this is because this doctor is very experienced. He's seen so many cases and has so much already that it kind of developed as like a muscle, that this intuition of, yeah, I mean, he's seen all of these similar cases and all of these treatments, but he knows that for this particular case, like the best recommendation is a certain one. And a lot of it is not logical. A lot of it is just because like of so much practice of getting it before, that now you know what it feels like and what it looks like and what the outcome is likely to be.
Yeah, there's so many like different modes of decision making and observing, and it's like really hard to really put labels on them, at least in my mind. Like I see the differences in the concepts, but learning like the word to really explain like what you're sharing to me is like the intuitive hunch, as you kind of shared, is there's still mind involved, and there is a space where the mind doesn't talk. And this is, I guess, controversial for some people. Whereas if you hear people talking about meditation and there's never a time when your mind isn't going or you don't hear that inner chatter, at least from my personal experience, which my whole message is that everyone's different and there's no right or wrong. And we have a mind that does categorize things into right or wrong, and that's helpful and serves a purpose. But my point is, there is a space that is just knowing, it's just an inner knowing. And as you mentioned, when you connect to nature, and these medicine people have these downloads, which is a good term to use it. It's not personal. It's not based on our direct experience and all the things that we've experienced in life that creates the hunch, like with the medical doctor. There is something separate, and it's really hard to trust that. And so trying to develop a relationship with nature and trust in and of itself is important. And to trust something without needing to know why is hard.
Yeah, there's different degrees of the intuition. Some of it is based on like past experiences and logic, and then some of it is just separate. So it's maybe a spectrum and different categories. But I think our society doesn't value, as you said, like something that you can't inherently trust and something that you can't inherently prove. So our society doesn't value it, and that's why the masculine and the feminine are out of balance. That's why, because the masculine is all about trying to kind of like overshadow the feminine and like put it in its place. And that goes for both like, the female and male relationship as humans, and the female figure being in all societies like seen as beneath the male society. We have a very patriarchal society. But also all those things that the mystical part of the woman, like the woman is able to birth and give life, and men don't understand that, and they will. So I listened to this interesting Indian mystic, and he was saying like something that you don't understand and can never fully grasp, you will never trust, and that's why they're like always trying to like oppress and suppress, because it's difficult to understand.
Yeah, I love listening to other people's philosophies and their ponderings on these important things. One of a really impactful book for me in my journey is Belonging by Topapa Turner. And she talks about kind of the divide with the masculine and feminine over history and where things shifted and why that is. And to kind of piggyback off what you were saying, it's so sad, and it really breaks my heart. Like when you were sharing that, the fact that we don't trust women in general, or the feminine, it's heartbreaking, and it's our lack of trust in nature. And I also wanted to just say it's something that's new for me to really use the term masculine and feminine. And I know that it's kind of controversial or can be triggering for some people, but we all have masculine and feminine within us. So when me and you, I don't want to speak for you, but when we're saying masculine and feminine, we're not saying like all men are evil and there's no place for the masculine, because there is. We need you, we need that force, we need that certainty, we need that safety, we need that protective nature. But we have to realize and recognize that both exist in us and in everything. And for some reason, there is a real imbalance. And in order, at least in my belief, in order to create a healthier, happier community and world, we need to restore that balance. And that's where it starts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the big picture.
Totally. And I think also like a big part of it is that as a society and humanity in general has always tried to rise above nature and like have it be subservient and like manipulate it to our advantage. And like while that's very smart, and we've done amazing progress with, and we progressed our society with those things, we also kind of lost sight of that balance and like giving thanks and that relationship. And also some people even view nature as like dangerous place, like don't go to the jungle because there's all these things that will are out to get you, or like this is dirty, and we're gonna have to clean up after this. And there's like this whole also negative aspect, because there are poisonous plants, there are poisonous and venomous snakes and bugs, and like as they carry viruses, like look at this, like, and they are vectors of disease and things like that. But I think it's also nature's way of kind of bringing the balance back. And I think there is a way to bring about harmony when we shouldn't be like scared or trying to overtake one another. I think there's a way to live in harmony.
Yeah, it's so important, and I'm so happy you brought up just like, I don't want to get into, of course, the virus and everything that's going on in the world, but that's what I keep seeing in everything. I'm like, feminine imbalance, feminine
Yeah.
imbalance, feminine imbalance.
Yeah.
It's it's important, and you're right. It's scary. Women are scary. The feminine is scary. The fact that we don't make sense is scary, but we're valid and we matter. So
Yeah. And I also was trained as a holistic health coach. So there we had the concept of adding things in rather than focusing on like taking bad things out. We always focus on adding good things in. So, like what you said before, if we focus on just like adding the good aspects and enjoying nature and bringing joy back into our life, instead of like, oh, okay, there's a cancer, we have to cut it out. But then like the energy of attraction and the law of attraction is like you keep on thinking about only the negative disease states, but you don't think about what will bring optimal wellness. So I think if we also balance that story that we tell ourselves that, oh, okay, we have this bad thing growing inside us, but saying like, but we have so many good cells inside of us too, and bringing back that health and that wonder and that joy.
yeah, and listening, like I think a lot of people in the holistic, integrative, functional medicine world recognize that our body and the symptoms that we have are messages to us. We're getting communication, and it's important to listen to what is being said before we mask it. There is a time and a place to mask it, to preserve life, to give us some more time to learn what you need. What do you need? And we don't listen at all. We just want to push it away. We don't want to deal with it. We're afraid of it. And there was something else that you said that I wanted to touch on. Oh, adding things in. Our culture, especially from pharmacists' mindset, is what drug, what supplement. And from my personal experience, after working in the pharmacy world, I took a short break, and I worked in a holistic chiropractor's office, which was the complete polar opposite, where they didn't trust medicine. And so I got to learn firsthand that those are both the same thing. I was like, everything that frustrated me in the traditional world is frustrating me here. Balance. So anyway, you can't ignore the need for all tools, which we mentioned, but I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, for me, traditional actually does not describe allopathic medicine. It describes actually like traditional, where we used our body intuition and plants and roots and herbs. And I think the reason there is so much distrust that you mentioned before about natural medicine and plants and herbs is because everybody knows that they do have constituents. They have chemical constituents. Yes, they're in the natural form and exist in nature, so they're not made in a lab like pharmaceutical drugs, but they do have potent qualities. And if you take the wrong plant or the wrong dose of a plant, it can be a problem and it can interfere with drug therapy. However, if you do take a whole plant, it's a very different experience than taking an isolated component, even if it's a natural supplement from that plant. It's very different things. There's synergy going on that we don't know scientifically yet. We only know intuitively as it exists in nature. There's a lot of things going on that we haven't yet studied. And I don't know if we ever will study every single constituent, because depending on the condition the plant is growing in, the soil quality, any kind of predators that are around, like you were saying, they secrete other things, when you pick it, when you harvest it, sunlight that it got, a lot of factors will go into effect one single plant. So the batches of plants will also have different constituents. But the body wisdom and the nature wisdom is that they work together synergistically in your body, and all the constituents in the plant actually work to protect from side effects and ameliorate some of the negative effects, perhaps. So yes, the dosing will be off. So it's not like very logical or rational, because batch to batch, the dosing will be off and things like that. So I think it cannot be a substitute for the Western model of like treating a person that way. It's more like connecting to nature and including it as part of your lifestyle to eat whole foods, go out and exercise, bring whatever joyful activities you like. If it includes forest bathing, then yes, do that. And then for preventative or for self-care means using small doses of plants that are safe, like, and you have studied them, or you've worked with a person who has studied plants. And so like you work within what kind of framework, but you don't just like go out and try to like eat a bunch of plants that you don't know. Yes, that's dangerous, but people who know and have studied it, they can guide you to the proper way of working with plants.
Yeah, and what you were saying is like we have to recognize where the individual is at. You can't force someone who doesn't trust plants to take plants, and you can't force someone who doesn't trust pharmaceuticals to take pharmaceuticals, because there is what is the placebo effect, right, to consider. Yeah. And that's its own enigma.
The negative bias.
If I believe if you have in your mind that something's not going to work for you, or you don't trust it, regardless how many studies we have on this specific person, it's not going to have the same impact. Our attention and awareness impacts it. Not trying to get really out there, but like the double slit experiment, if anyone's ever thought about like physics and I can't think of it right now.
Quantum physics.
Thank you. Yeah. So the observer impacts the outcome.
Yes.
So when we are treating our health, our opinions matter, our beliefs matter, and that's something that I'm a big proponent of. You have to treat the individual and create a personalized regimen for them and consider their beliefs. That's going to impact their care, and that's going to impact the results that we see. And you're dealing with a human being. They're different than you, and we have to be able to withstand differences to get to the ultimate goal of helping and creating health.
Yeah, like we put all our weight into evidence-based medicine right now. Like all our eggs are in that basket right now, but we're missing the point of all the biases that happen. Not all studies are published, and the fact that there even is a study will influence the outcome. So my message is actually like, why not harness the placebo effect? Why not bring that to a large scale? Why not have prevention on a large scale so we have less individual health problems to even focus on? And then whatever individual problems do crop up, yes, absolutely treat them as an individual. But the problems that we're all like I'm seeing out there are so similar across the board that we can just all learn from like a few very simple things to do and improve health globally. So that is like my big mission, to kind of just get everybody on board and all of us, working for a common cause.
Yeah, lifestyle medicine, it's real, it matters, and the simple things cause profound impact. But people don't want to change because our behaviors are hard to change, and our relationships are hard to change. Our relationship to food, our relationship to exercise, our relationship to technology, and the way that it impacts our sleep. These are the things that you really need to change if you want change. And all these chronic conditions need to be treated with a more long-term perspective. Make small changes that are going to give you that big impact, whereas short-term, taking a pill, taking a supplement is helpful, but it's not going to give you long-term results.
Yeah, so the same person that I was mentioning, the Indian guru, his name is Sadhguru actually, and he's like part of the Isha Foundation. And right now they're having like a sale and also a free course just for healthcare workers, by the way. And so he was saying, if you are well adjusted in a sick society, are you well? So that's kind of the question we should be asking ourselves. Like, our society as a whole is not balanced and
you're doing well in it. Are you healthy?
Right. So if you are just like everybody else and that's normal, but that doesn't mean it's optimal, and that doesn't mean it's healthy and right. So I think it's a combination again of the individual approach, but also like figuring out where you are in society and are you okay with that, or should society also kind of make shifts to change? And I think slowly by our individual efforts and affecting each other and like being accountable and maybe affecting just one more person or one more household, all of us will start to make these global differences.
Yeah, that's something that I've really recently understood, is that it's not selfish. Like this whole kind of shift in our behaviors or thought patterns around self-care, and so many people with big hearts, people in healthcare, we want to help others, we want them to be well, but if you're not healthy first, you can't help them. We know this from studies on children development. If your parent tells you don't do this and is doing that thing, you're learning the behavior. So same thing goes with healthcare professionals. If you're telling them do this, that, and that, and you're not doing it, they're still being informed. Like we mentioned, the immune system, all these other components of us are being informed by what's not being said. It exists. It's there. We can't just focus on our word and our mind and tell people all the things we know. We need to start with us, and we influence others. We make a difference. We're part of the collective. We want the world to be healthy. We have to be healthy. And it's an individual journey, and we can get support from others, but the individual has to be involved.
There's also a concept of the wounded healer. So like those of us that have health conditions, we're actually the ones that are exploring all these alternative options. And like you mentioned, your health journey, and I have a health journey. So it's not to say that if you are suffering from some illness or have suffered in the past that you can't help and inspire and heal others. It's just to say that you should also make a priority to do the work yourself. You could still be doing it. You don't have to be 100% cured, but you lead by example, and don't just be a hypocrite and say this, but do another thing, but also do the work that you're recommending other people do.
Yeah, I really appreciate that point. It's not, we shouldn't feel shame for having health issues, and some of the philosophical, spiritual communities can have that unintentionally shared. And so if we're struggling, no one's gonna, I mean, hopefully we're striving for health, we're striving for perfect health, but if you're not there, that doesn't mean that you should feel like you're a bad person, you're doing something wrong. It's a journey, it's a lifetime. We're here to live and to explore and to care for ourselves and one another. And as you said, it just takes small steps, and it's a commitment. If you want health, you're gonna have to work on it every single day. And that doesn't mean you have to be working to the hustle and the way that our modern culture defines the term work, but there's an intention, and there's kindness and compassion, and it's not a rush, it's a journey, it's an experience. We're here to live life, not to figure it out or to find perfection, and so many of us get trapped in that.
Yeah, I think both happiness and health are a journey. You can't just say like, you know, a singular moment that I'm happy doesn't extend for infinity. I think it's just like your perspective as you live life can be happy, can choose happiness, and it could also choose habits that will improve health. So anyway, I could talk to you for hours. We're running out of time. And so I just want to ask a few quick questions. Tell us a little bit more about your business model, if you're still working in pharmacy or if you have completely transitioned.
I am working part-time as a pharmacist. Right now I'm working for Capsule remotely. My intention is to try and find a balance, like I preach, where I am devoted to the things that I feel inspired to share, but also having the masculine support and security taken into account. And so right now I am doing part-time this, part-time that. And so my part-time work on my own business, Biophilia Wellness, is right now I'm offering nature therapy guided walks, and I'm trying to integrate my medical wisdom into that, where I can offer medication therapy management, considering lifestyle interventions, and work more intimately with patients, give them that relationship that they need to see real changes. And I'm right now doing virtual walks. So if people aren't in Long Island, New York, and they want to get a taste, they can find me there. I'm taking it kind of month by month at this point. I think everyone is, for how long I'll be doing virtual. But I'm really happy to work with other people, to collaborate, to connect, to have conversations. So reach out.
Yeah, well, we can collaborate on forest guided therapy and some herbal plants that we can identify in there, medicinal herbs. And I was also a virtual remote worker at Capsule last year.
Awesome.
So yeah, so we have that in common. All right, so we're at the end of the interview, but if you just have a couple more minutes, I have rapid fire questions.
Okay, good.
Okay, number one, what is the number one thing people can do right now to improve their quality of life?
Love themselves.
Perfect. Very short and sweet and simple. Not very simple to do, but good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, number two, what is your favorite hobby or pastime? I think I know the answer, but
Being in nature.
cool. And number three, what's your favorite beverage to drink?
I love water. I've been addicted to water. It's never been hard for me to drink water, and I genuinely like enjoy it. Like,
Yeah, it does taste really good, especially when you're thirsty. Awesome. All right. Well, I'll have all the links that you mentioned in the show notes. And thank you so much for sharing your philosophy and your wisdom and everything that we spoke about. I really, really enjoyed our talk today, and I hope other people will resonate as well.
Thank you so much. I really had so much fun doing this. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, I'll hopefully keep in touch and collaborate with you in the future.
See you soon.
Enjoy your Sunday. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Raw Fork podcast, and I truly hope that you enjoyed it and learned something from it. If you did enjoy it, please don't hesitate to leave us a 5-star rating and a short, sweet review so that other listeners can find us across podcast platforms. To get in touch with me, you can go to rawfork.com or email me directly at marina@rawfork.com. Thank you, and I hope to see you back here next week.